No good. Get out of there right now.
When I heard that our daughter had been in an accident, I immediately rushed to the hospital. As soon as I called my husband and told him the name of the hospital where she was taken, he screamed, "She's about to go into surgery." I asked my husband why, but he just kept repeating in an impatient voice, "You can't stay there." We had to make a decision immediately because the doctor had told us that she needed surgery as soon as possible. Later, when I found out the too selfish and terrible reason why my husband refused to go to this hospital, my whole body became hot with a bubbling anger. I am Scarlett, 30 years old. I work part-time during the day. I married my husband, Brandon, who is 5 years older than me and an office worker, 7 years ago, and we now live together with our 6-year-old daughter, Victoria. Although my husband had to go on a business trip once a week, he made it a point to spend time with our family on his days off. I felt happy every day with my kind and caring husband and our lovely daughter. Then one day, a field trip was scheduled to take place at her kindergarten, and Victoria happily packed her lunch and snacks in her bag. She was so excited about the long-awaited field trip that she was in high spirits from the morning, and when the kindergarten bus arrived in front of my house, she got on with a smile and waved to me. In the afternoon, when I was off from my part-time job and finished my chores and took a break with a cup of coffee, I received a call on my cell phone from the kindergarten. I wonder if she left something. When I picked up the phone, the teacher said impatiently, "Victoria was in a traffic accident and had to be rushed to the hospital. My daughter had suddenly run off the road during a field trip and was hit by a truck." My mind went blank and my heart started palpitating. With my voice trembling, I asked the teacher where she was being taken and rushed to the hospital. "Is Victoria safe? I can't wait to see her." I was guided to the hospital room, and when I saw Victoria lying on the bed in pain, I was so shocked that I lost all strength in my body. The doctor in charge told me that she needed surgery immediately, and after explaining her symptoms, he handed me a consent form for surgery. I hurriedly called my husband and told him about Victoria's condition and the name of the hospital. Then, my husband said something surprising.
That hospital is no good. Get out of there right now.
"What are you talking about? She's about to go into surgery. And what do you mean, get out?"
Shut up. You can't stay there anyway. You understand?
With that, my husband unilaterally hung up the phone. Although I was concerned about what my husband said, my daughter's surgery was urgent, so I signed the consent form. 2 hours later, I was relieved to hear from the doctor that Victoria's surgery was a success. "Doctor, is my daughter going to be okay now?" The doctor told me, "Don't worry. Now let's have Victoria do her best in rehabilitation." I was relieved.
Mommy.
About an hour later, my daughter woke up from the anesthesia with a worried look on her face. "Victoria, are you okay? Does it hurt?" My daughter nodded quietly. I wanted to take her place if I could, but I couldn't stop crying because as a mother I was helpless to do anything for her. I told Victoria that she had been in an accident and had been rushed to the hospital by ambulance, and that she was having surgery and would be in the hospital for a while. Still, I soothed my daughter, who was shedding tears, saying, "I want to go home with Mommy." I stayed with her until the last minute of visiting hours, made sure Victoria had a good night's sleep, and then went home. I also called my part-time job place and was able to take some days off since next day. After my husband returned home, I told him that my daughter's surgery had gone well. "Hey, honey, why did you say that hospital was no good? What do you mean, Get out.
Are you still going to talk about it? Anyway, it's not safe there. And you had admitted to the hospital for an operation without my permission.
My husband began to mumble and complain about me, wrinkling his brow. Honey, Victoria said she wanted to see Daddy, so you should go see her. I told my husband about the visiting hours at the hospital, but he still looked grim.
Even if I go to see her, I can take her home. You know, you must feel sorry for Victoria.
I'll talk to her there, so can you go see her?
You're so persistent. I told you a while ago that I can't.
My husband slammed his fork down on the table and slunk away to his room with a sour look. I had never seen my husband raise his voice like this before, so I was puzzled. After that, whenever he saw my face, he kept urging me to get Victoria out of the hospital as soon as possible. And I was fed up with this. A week later, my daughter is slowly getting better and has learned the names of the nurses. In particular, the chief nurse, Taylor, is kind and seems to be her favorite. Even so, Victoria misses home and often says, I can't wait to go home. I want to see my daddy. However, the doctor in charge told her that her rehabilitation was taking too long and she would need to stay in the hospital for a while longer. And she cried forever. That night, after dinner, he spoke to me.
Hey, Victoria is fine now, right? She can leave the hospital soon, right?
Yes, she's fine, but she needs to stay in the hospital for a while longer because of rehabilitation.
What? I can't trust my precious daughter to a quack anymore. So get out of the hospital right away. Otherwise, I won't pay for her hospitalization.
Wait a minute. Why do you say that? Victoria needs rehabilitation, okay?
Shut up. All you have to do is shut up and listen to me.
I was not convinced by my husband's words, but I could not seem to talk calmly with his red-faced and angry face. In fact, this kind of thing had been happening over and over again for the past few days. Come to think of it, he loses his temper every time we talk about the hospital. But it's just weird. I began to feel uncomfortable with my husband's attitude. The next day, when I went to the hospital to see my daughter, as soon as she saw my face, she asked, "Where's Dad?" "I'm sorry, Daddy is too busy with work to come see you." I showed sulking my daughter a family photo I had brought from home. Immediately, her face lit up.
Wow, it's Daddy. Victoria and Mommy are there too.
Now you can see any time.
Yes. Thank you, Mommy.
When I displayed the picture on the table by my daughter's bed, Victoria smiled and looked happy and said to the nurse nearby, Look, it's Victoria's daddy." She showed the picture to a nearby nurse. Then my daughter's favorite head nurse came in.
"Taylor, this is Victoria's daddy."
"Pat, show me." She looked at the photo smilingly, but her expression suddenly seemed to turn cold.
Had Victoria have Daddy, don't you? I thought you didn't have Daddy because he never came to see you. I'm sorry.
Daddy is with me.
The chief nurse's unexpected words made my daughter burst into tears. I looked at the nurse as I stroked Victoria's back, and she seemed to be smiling wanly. "Victoria, I'll be back." For some reason, she said that while staring into my eyes and quickly left the hospital room. She is usually so kind. Why? I had a bad feeling about this. When I got home that night, my husband suddenly said,
"I'm going on a business trip tomorrow."
To my surprise, my husband's once-a-week business trip had increased to 3 days out of a week. This had never happened before. Is it really necessary to increase his business trips so suddenly?
I can help it. I'm busy with work. What about dinner?
My husband raised his voice and immediately changed the subject. I knew he must be hiding something from me. It was the moment when what had been only a suspicion turned into a certainty. The next morning, after my husband left for work, I was cleaning the house and found his notebook left on the desk. I wonder if he needs it to be at work. So I called the company because my husband's phone was disconnected. I couldn't believe my ears when the woman who answered said, "Brandon is off today." I quickly apologized, saying, "My mistake, I'm sorry," and casually mentioned that my husband's business trips had increased, to which she replied, "He hasn't been traveling these days." My mind was in turmoil, but I knew something was wrong. What in the world was he doing taking a day off? I searched through my husband's belongings to find out what he was doing, but found no evidence. I was at a loss, so I looked at the drive recorder in his car to see if there was any evidence. However, there was only data from family outings, but when I casually checked the settings, I found that the audio was turned off, so I turned it on. Why did he need to change the setting? But I'm sure he's hiding something. So I looked again at the notebook that my husband had left behind and discovered something. My hands were shaking with anger. What is this? I ordered a small GPS on the internet on the spot, hoping to get some evidence. I secretly attached the GPS to my husband's car, and from that day on, I decided to keep an eye on him at all times. Sure enough, the GPS frequently made unnatural movements. He even went into a hotel. I spent all the time except for visiting hours with my daughter and followed him to capture evidence. In addition, I asked for help from someone my husband knew well in order to carry out a certain operation. The person was puzzled, but agreed to help. Finally, the day of the operation finally arrived. I looked at my husband's GPS and saw that he was exactly where I thought he would be. My husband's car was parked proudly in the parking lot, which made me even angrier. I put my hat on deeply so that my face could not be seen, and with a small cardboard box, I pressed the intercom at the entrance of the apartment. The collaborator with me stands out of view of the camera.
Yes. What is it?
It's a delivery. I changed my tone of voice and pretended to be a delivery man, and the person seemed to trust me and unlocked the entrance to the apartment. I took the elevator to the floor where the room was located and knocked on the room, and a woman came out from inside looking annoyed. There were my husband's shoes in the doorway as a matter of course.
Thanks for your help.
As soon as she received the box, I took off my hat and forcefully went up from the front door into the house and proceeded down the hallway.
Hey, what the hell?
She was startled and came after me without locking the door.
What's wrong with you? Whoa.
My husband, who had been relaxing in the living room with his own face, let out a loud yell as soon as he saw me. What are you doing here?
I just came to thank the chief nurse who is taking care of Victoria.
Yes, this is the apartment of my husband's unfaithful partner. It was found out because the GPS often showed this location. Moreover, that partner was Taylor, the chief nurse at the hospital where Victoria is hospitalized. My husband said that hospital is no good because he was wary that Victoria's hospitalization would reveal the affair. I had a hunch that Chief Nurse Taylor's reaction was strange when I displayed a family photo in my daughter's hospital room. But that alone was not enough proof. My suspicions were confirmed when I found her name in the address book of my husband's forgotten notebook and also found a written after her name. In the end, my husband was just putting his own selfish convenience before our daughter. Now my husband has shifty eyes, upset and unable to make excuses even if he wanted to. His mouth is puckering like a fish, The unfaithful partner was smiling thinly, saying nothing. It's strange that you even went all the way into her room to thank her and make yourself at home.
That's.
My husband seemed to be trying hard to find an excuse, but he was floundering as if he couldn't come up with anything. And you said you were going on a business trip today, didn't you?
Well, the company told me it was suddenly canceled. So I'm in a bit of trouble.
That's impossible. I called them and they said you haven't been on a business trip once in the last 6 months.
Who told you such a thing? There is no room for laxity at all, isn't there?
I was disgusted by my husband's refusal to admit his fault, so I pointed to the box I had just handed to her. Why don't you open that box? My husband dropped the box in surprise when he saw what was inside. He was so astonished that he dropped the box because it was filled with all the evidence I had gathered about his affair. I picked up a picture of the two of them going in a hotel from among the evidence scattered on the floor, and I thrust it in front of my husband's eyes. How can you look at this and say that you are not having an affair? Then, to my surprise, he was upset.
Don't make a fuss over a mere affair. It's your job as a wife to shut up and admit it.
That's right. I feel sorry for Brandon, who got a small-minded woman as his wife.
Even when confronted with the evidence, the two of them seemed to want to somehow make me the bad guy. But that wasn't going to happen. I wonder if you could say the same thing about me after seeing this. Next, I pulled out my cell phone and showed them the drive recorder footage. I had saved all the drive recorder footage on my phone. In that video, he says to the unfaithful partner who is leaving him, "I'll divorce her as soon as my daughter is discharged from the hospital. Can you wait until then?" He even said, "The only person I love is Taylor." The husband suddenly became nervous, looking restless, but the unfaithful partner remained resolute, not taking offense. By the way, I've had all our conversations here so far recorded. Then the collaborator, who had been hiding in the hallway all this time, appeared with a voice recorder.
Heck, Mom.
My husband was even more surprised than when he saw me earlier and froze with his eyes widened. Standing in front of him, my mother-in-law scolded him.
"Brandon, you did the same thing to your own father. I'm going to cut off our relationship as mother and son as of today."
Hey, Mom, don't be so easy on me. My husband cried to my mother-in-law with tears in his eyes, but she ignored him. She told me that when my husband was 3 years old, his father left the family and went to be with his unfaithful partner. Since then, my mother-in-law had to work very hard to raise him with only her hands. He grew up watching his mother and is quite a motherfucker. My husband slumped to the floor and blurted out, "Mom, I'm sorry," and burst into tears. Sighing in disgust, I confronted him with the divorce papers. "I demand you to pay me $30,000 for alimony and $10,000 for the division of property, and I'll charge you $800 per month as child support. Since you betrayed our family, it can't be helped, can it?"
I don't want to do this. I will never divorce you. Unlike my father, I would never abandon my family. So I don't have to pay alimony, do I?
He didn't seem to understand the disconnect between what he was saying and what he was doing. Hearing my husband's words, the unfaithful partner is furious, saying, "That's not what we're talking about." Then my mother-in-law raised her voice.
"You have no right to refuse a divorce. If you feel sorry for Scarlett and Victoria, be a man and sign the papers and pay up."
My husband's shoulders shook with fear at my mother-in-law's words, and he signed the divorce papers without saying a word. Pointing at my husband, who was in tears. The unfaithful partner laughed high-handedly.
Ha ha ha. That's a nice touch. He deserved it.
You don't have time to laugh. I'm going to charge you $15,000 in alimony as well.
What? Don't drag me into your marital problems. I will never pay it.
There is so much evidence of your affair. What do you think will happen if I tell the hospital about this? Immediately, her attitude, which had been so bullish, changed drastically.
I'm sorry. I'll pay you alimony. But please forgive me for that. Please.
She got down on her knees, crying. Beside her, my husband also got down on his knees.
I'm sorry, Scarlett. Let's start over again. So please forgive me.
You only thought of your own convenience when Victoria was in an accident and needed an operation. There is no way I can start over with someone like that.
Oh, no.
I never want to see your face again. Goodbye. I turned my back on them. You were still crying about something and left the apartment with my mother-in-law. The next day, I filed divorce papers with the city office. My ex-husband was later fired from his job after it was discovered that he had claimed the cost of a date with an unfaithful partner as company entertainment expenses. He sold his home to pay alimony, child support, and even compensation to the company, and is now moving from one internet cafe to another, but with no fixed address. It would be impossible for him to find a new job. The unfaithful partner was let down as chief of staff because I told the hospital about this incident. In the end, the head nurse told me that she resigned because she found it hard to stay at the hospital. Meanwhile, I moved back to my parents' house. Victoria was safely discharged from the hospital, and my parents love her and she's doing well. I will continue to do my best to keep my daughter